Okay, a very good afternoon, everyone. Let me just get set up here. Okay, very good afternoon. My name is Zihan. I'm from SG Tech. It's a real privilege to have you join us today for this Navigating Your Career in ICT. And we are hoping that this session will really help many of you who are interested to join the sector for the first time, figure out how you can land that first role in the tech sector. I know that many of you are probably concerned about not having the right skills or not knowing what employers want and not knowing what's available out there to help you, right? And to give you the right support in order to make that transition. And so that's why we have a very exciting lineup of speakers here today that will hopefully be able to guide you. And we hope that, from this very short lunch webinar session, you'll be able to pick up at least where you can go for the right resources and pick up some tips, right, on how you can make that successful career transition. Okay, with that, let me just run through a couple of house rules, right, before we get started. First thing is that, for your display name, please try to put your actual name, at least your first name, so that we'll know how to address you if you're asking the questions. And second, very importantly for the Q&A, we'll be having a panel later, a very interesting panel. And you can ask your questions to the panel, right? So we have a Q&A module in Zoom. If you look at your control panel, there should be something called Q&A there. So that's where you can type in your questions and submit them through the Q&A module, right? There's also a chat function where you can chat with the panelists. Unfortunately, not everyone can see the chat. Only the panelists will be able to see it, but submit your questions through the Q&A. So that makes it easier for us to manage later. So these are two very simple house rules. So this is our program for the day. Okay, we're done with the welcome, right? So that was me. So the first speaker that we're going to have is going to be talking about, sharing her experience, right, on switching careers. Then we will have a volunteer career advisor from WSG's Career Advisor Initiative, Volunteer Career Advisor Initiative, who will also be sharing. WSG or Workforce Singapore is the one who really made this possible. So really want to thank them. And they'll be sharing about what they'll be offering through their support, right? Then we'll have a panel dialogue that should be about 45 minutes. That's where we can try to address all the questions that you have, as many as possible, right? We can't address all, but we try to address the most pertinent ones that we hope will help you, right? Then after that, we'll have a closing. We'll share some of the opportunities that you can actually tap on at the end of this webinar. So not just sharing, the how, the why, right? But also some specific initiatives that you can land on, right, for follow-up after this webinar. Okay, with that, let me jump straight to our first speaker. And our first speaker is Ms. Dion Center. She's the co-founder and CEO of Climb by Talent Plus. So Climb is a SME leadership program that really leverages on the methodology of Talent Plus, which is really about finding, what's best, what the human strengths are, and bringing out the best in people. So she's a huge proponent of positive psychology, right? I am a beneficiary of Climb myself. I've been through the program, and it's an excellent program. So she's really going to be sharing with us her wisdom, right? Her insights on, the whole psychology behind what it takes to make a career switch. So without further ado, let me just hand over the time to Dion. Dion, please.
Thank you, Zian. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me well. Zian, can you hear me and see my slides?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Dion. I'm really excited to be here today. Career switching is a personal topic. So maybe I first start off with, if you let me indulge with my personal story. In 1993, I graduated from university. I graduated top of my class, and I got my dream job in sales and marketing right away. In a year, I became a manager. In 3 years, I moved to China, and I was on an expat salary. And then I moved on. I had a very successful career for 12 years, working for some of the most recognized hospitality brand in the world. But in 2005, I took a break from work because I had my daughter. But in 5 years' time, back in 2010, I wanted to come back to work and was looking for a job. At the time, I was in a new city. I have no connection. I don't know if I want to go back to hospitality industry. I don't know what position I should be applying for because it's been a long time. I have lost all of my customer contacts because I'm now in the different countries. Through my husband's connection, I managed to get an interview with a headhunter. And but thinking back, I vividly remember not knowing first what to wear and what to say in the interview. I tanked in the interview. I did not do well. I think I confused the headhunter so much that at the end, he asked me, can you really work full time, going back to work? So I wasn't sure. Of course, after that interview, I got zero any other further interview with any prospective employer. So you can imagine I was crushed. I was feeling all of these things that listed on this slide. I lost my confidence. I was doubting myself. I was afraid that I'm not sure if I can take on a new job. I don't have any new skills. I didn't know what was the industry like. I was perceived being not flexible, cannot travel, cannot work full-time because I have a small child. And physically, perhaps I wasn't in my best shape. So sometimes, when we're going through mid-career transition, some of these feelings come up, right? So the goal is, how can we go back? Now research has shown that, we actually all probably going to live a lot longer life than our parents. We all may live until we're 100 years old. So if we do live until 100 years old, our prime time is not going to be just in our 20 or 30. Our prime time, actually, it might be in our 40, 50, 60s. So how do we relive our prime? Having confidence, looking for purposeful work, and then also having the energy behind it, having that vitality. So I wanted to share some of the framework. Now I actually completely switched my career in the last 11 years. I've been in consulting. I run a leadership program, as Zian said, over at SMU Academy. We focus on positive psychology, human behavior, and then coaching. So I wanted to share with you some of, this framework that it could be helpful for you to think about when you are making a career switch. Now, the framework, look at these elements. First, we want to look at self. And then we want to look at, hey, what is the fear zone? What is the learning zone? And what is the growth zone? And I think, confronting your fear or acknowledge that fear that you have, it's a powerful process. A lot of time we ask people in our class, what are your fears when you're facing career change? And people will say, I'm not sure if I can take on the job, or I'm not sure if I'm going to fit in a new environment, or I'm not sure about what the employer is looking for. So there's a lot of fear, anxiety, stress. So talking about it, putting them down, it's a helpful process. So that's number one, confronting your fear. And then what we also want to think about is, how do we get to the growth zone, right? A lot of what we, really advocate was really look inward, look at yourself first, looking at your talent, what's innately come natural to you, look at your skill set currently, what do you know, what do you have? And then your values, what are some of the things that is very important for you when you make decisions? And then maybe the health aspect, that currently, if you have to work another 20, 30, maybe 40 years, what kind of health condition that you want to be in so that it sustains that vitality when you're making a career switch. Now, when we look at a person's competency, we always like to look at these three elements. Talent is one, and then skills, technical skills, and then knowledge. Now, talent is something that we typically say don't change that much because it comes with you, so they are transferable. So, it doesn't matter today you are doing this job with this industry, tomorrow you're going into a digital role or another industry, these talent comes with you. So you need to know what they are, right? Skills is something that you can train, or get training from. And those are technical skills. You can enhance yourself, and you want to look at what are the skills gap, and then knowledge as well. You can, equip yourself with better knowledge. So I want to emphasize, how we define talent is something that is inherent to you, something that you're naturally good at, your spontaneous behavior, things that you can always count on, or things that consistently you behave. And when you have a chance to express that, you get intrinsic satisfaction. Now, how do you know your talent? There's many ways. One way, of course, perhaps is doing an assessment. Then it will give you that language. I am someone that is positive. I'm someone that is resourceful. I'm someone that is detail-oriented. That's one way. Now, if you don't have access to an assessment, you can also think about asking yourself these questions. Writing down the answer perhaps will really get you to an area whereby you say, okay, I know what I'm good at. I know my talent. It could be your strengths, the skills that come natural to you, something that you always do better than the other. And what are the things that energize you? Or maybe you think about, hey, what people come to you for? Maybe you're a good listener. You always extend empathy. You're very service oriented. So these are what we call talent. So again, I wanted to emphasize that talent are transferable. So you can go from the old to the new job. Some of these listed here: problem solver, being proactive, taking initiative, being positive, service with a smile, caring, having empathy, collaborative, being curious, resourceful, organized. These are all natural talent. So that's number one. The second things that, we want to look at is your value. These are sort of the guiding principle that when you make decision, and you can look at many things. Values come with many things. Some of these are here: freedom, balance, family, health, flexibility. And value, typically, we say changes actually throughout your life. In the early days, perhaps family is not one of my values because I was single. I want to have more freedom. I want to have more experience. So family might not be the first choice in my value. But, when thinking back, when I came back to work, family was one of the value. I wanted to make sure that my daughter was looked after, but then I didn't realize that how important that is. So it's actually affected the way that I present myself. So once you determine your value, you also want to ask yourself these questions: are they attainable when you are doing a mid-career switch? Are they temporarily not attainable? And you can come back to have it back into your value system. What do you want to give up, or willing to give up or not give up? So this is something that is personal. Now, once you know yourself, once you know your value, then you want to thinking about identifying a job or industry of preference based on your talent. There are many models out there. This is a Holland career model, which is quite helpful. Is thinking about your talent. If you are very people-oriented, perhaps you can think about a career in social, which is always interacting with people. Or maybe you're a bit more of a thinker, then there might be industry that is more in that space. Or you like to follow rules, you like to be in an environment that there's a lot of process. You're more pragmatic, more of a doer. Then there are industry that fit that talent that you have. So you want to identify, an industry, a possible job or industry that maybe is suitable for your talent. Someone, like myself, which is a lot of people talent, and I would be not that interested to be in an industry, perhaps like a lab research. That wouldn't excite me. So you want to be in an industry, even you're making a career switch, that something that would excite you. Then, typically once you identify a job, then you can look at what is the skills that require for the job. And you can do an analysis, you know, a gap analysis. What are the skills that you have and what are the skills that you don't have? This is just an example. You know, last year, actually, we had to change from doing all of our classes in classroom to virtual. So we also had not so much of a career change, but also we had to make a switch in terms of how do we teach on a digital platform. And it took quite a bit because at first, you know, we were all scared. Again, the fear, right? You know, we were all not sure. Can we do it? We can't do it. You know, we went back and forth. But then we kind of list down all of the skills that we require to make the switch. And then we ended up, hey, we just have to learn new things, practice more, and then test it out. And then we were able to make the switch. So this is also another way to look at skills gap, you know, looking at in these two dimensions, what are your interests, what are your talent and skills, is it low or high? Ideally, you want to, when you're making your career switch, you want to look at the right hand and the lower right hand quadrant, you know, where you have high interest, maybe low skill, but then you can acquire skills to go up to the high upper right hand side quadrant, the high job satisfaction. You might take up a job that is low interest, but you have a lot of skills. But eventually, it might be too repetitive or too boring for you. And ideally, you don't want to be in the lower quadrant because from a long-term sustainability perspective, not recommended if you're not interested and you don't have a lot of skills in the area. And then at the end, we will say, well, how do we get to the growth zone, right? How do we go from fear? What did we learn? How do we grow? This is just my example, is to plotting all of these information down. What's your talent? What's your value? What are you trying to do? What is the career interest? What are the gaps? So you can also put down the action plan. So the idea is, you know, going from understanding self to taking action. And lastly, I'm sure, you know, if you work with a lot of career coaches, you might practice your elevator pitch. You know, you might, you know, need to do that when you go for a job interview or speaking to a potential employer. It's really important that you put all of these information down and practice. You know, thinking back 11 years ago, I wish I knew all of these. You know, I wish I know myself better. I wish I knew my value better. I wish I know my interests better. Because looking back, I wouldn't hire myself back then. So I hope that, you know, this framework help you to think about how to prepare yourself for career switch in a more structured way. And lastly, I just want to leave this quote with you. We always want people to know themselves first, look inward. If you know yourself, then you can climb further. So thank you, Xian. That is my last slide. And I really appreciate this opportunity for sharing.
Thank you, Dion. Let me just... Okay, thanks, Dion. And that was really, really insightful. I think many of us, myself included, always assume that, you know, to make a successful career switch is all about the technical skills, right? And getting the technical skills right. But I think as I found out firsthand through your program, really that, you know, the talent, right, that is inherent to us, right, is equally, if not more important. And that's really an eye-opener. So thank you. Thank you for that, sharing your wisdom, Dion. Next up, we actually have a volunteer career advisor. Now, Albert has a very interesting career journey, right? He's had more than 10 years of experience in many, many sectors, right? Finance, retail, telecoms, and he's now the head of CRM and data management at Veltech Digital. And he's here in his capacity as a volunteer career advisor, which is an amazing initiative by Workforce Singapore that actually, you know, gets volunteers that have been through journeys that are similar to all career switches, right? They have actually walked that path. And now they are here to share their own insights as, you know, somebody who has crossed that career river, like I like to say, right? And, you know, give back to the community. So I won't steal his thunder. I'll hand it over to Albert. But before that, WSG actually has prepared a video, right, that they want to share. So after we play the video, I will just hand over the time to Albert to talk about the Volunteer Career Advisor Initiative. Can we have the video, please?
Mr. Tan, so you are aware of the long working hours, right?
Believe me, I've worked all hours.
You have what? 15 more years to offer, at best?
I like to see it as bringing 25 years of experience to the table.
Do you really think you can keep up with the younger ones though?
Mr. Tan,
Are you aware of work-life balance?
Are you sure you can handle the stress? Are you prepared to work overtime?
Brian, your skills are transferable. Plus, you got the advantage of having done all this before.
You know, a very successful exec once gave me some excellent advice that I should turn age into an advantage. I know some tricks that the younger ones will thank me for.
Then Papa, you have our permission.
Thank you for the support. And thank you for your advice.
You're welcome, Brian. Now, all the best for your interview, okay?
Okay, with that, let me just hand over the time to Albert. Albert, take it away.
Thank you, Zehan. So let me just share my screen. Okay, y'all can see my screen, right? Okay, cool.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so thank you. I'm really glad to be invited for today's session. My name is Albert. So like what Zehan mentioned, I'm actually part of a team of volunteer career advisors. And for myself, I've actually gone through the PCP program, specifically under the Salesforce conversion and training. And I'm happy to share with you my experience, probably in the Q&A later as well. So what is this team of volunteer career advisors and what do we do? So hopefully the next 10 minutes, right, that I will share with you will be able to shed some light on that, okay? The Volunteer Career Advisors, right, is actually an initiative that is set up by the Career Advisory Program Office at WSG, or CAPO, or CAPO, or, you know, CAPO for short. You know, when I was getting to know this wonderful group of people, right, at WSG, and I was asking them, hey, what do you guys do? And they said, just call us kepo lah. You know, kepo is actually Singapore slang for minding someone else's business, okay, for those not in the know, okay? But it really cracked me up then, because I think kepo, you know, they're kepo for a really good reason, right? They're trying to find out how best they can help people who are transitioning their careers, people in the various demographic segments, people of various backgrounds, you know, from the different verticals, and even sometimes customizing solutions down to the individual level as well. So it's really admirable what these guys are doing. Okay, so for myself, I represent a small group of career mentors from the different industry verticals. There are industry verticals covering retail, e-commerce, education. For myself, ICT. ICT is very broad. Probably in the Q&A, I will share a little bit about specific areas of ICT I can give insight and advice on. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. Okay, so like what I said, right, we're all volunteers. And I think if you ask any of the advisors why we do this, they will all say roughly the same thing. We have received and we want to give back. We think this is a great platform to give back. You know, just like what the Chinese say, when you're thirsty and you want a cup of fresh water, and when you drink it, you know, always remember the source, where it comes from, 饮水思源, right? So for people, you know, who are transitioning their careers, you know, we think this is a great platform for us to give back. We've been there before. We know it's a tough journey, okay? And we know how important it is to stay positive. So we'll help you to do just that. But more than just to encourage you, I think we're also here to provide helpful, practical tips about the latest hiring trends in the respective industries which we represent, okay, and what you yourself can do to stay relevant, okay? So just know this, like what the slide says, you're not alone. We're with you on this journey together with you, okay? Okay, so, you know, it's well identified, well known. Technology is causing a lot of disruption. every industry, not just my industry, not just in ICT, but for ICT, we see many new roles coming into play. Okay, we see the rise of the digital marketer. Okay, we see roles like social media community managers, right? Basically, roles which help organizations manage their branding online, PR on social platforms. We see performance marketer, so people with skill sets in GA, Google Analytics, Facebook ads, basically an understanding of how customers come into the acquisition funnel, how customers do their search marketing prior to making a purchase decision. These are the kind of skill sets that are, in demand in ICT, for example. Even for UX, right? And I've been fortunate to be part of that as well. Organization wants people who have skill sets in UX, in IA or information architecture, people who know how customers can expect to be served online, whether it's through activation of their subscriptions, for payments, or even to make simple inquiries, right? So organizations are looking for people to have skill sets to be able to advise them in these areas, how to enhance the customer experience. And I'm sure it's the case for the other industries as well. So hence this program to give advisees or participants in this program an idea of what it's like in the field, right? So you see the three objectives of the program. I think the most important is to offer the last one, right? Offer a channel of support, right? People who are transitioning in their careers, to make them know they're not doing this alone. Many people keep saying, why am I making the same mistake over and over again in my job search journey, whether it's with regards to applying for a job, going for an interview, or even shaping their resumes. And the reason why they're doing so is because they're doing the same thing over and over again, right? They're sending out their resumes without customization. They're applying for any role that fits their existing skill sets. They're taking up training courses without knowing how it can help their career prospects. And that's why we're here. We're here to give you the insight and to offer you better information so that you can make your respective decisions, make better decisions. So what do we do? Okay, so we conduct sessions with you. Okay, once you have actually identified, among the different career advisors available, you have identified the specific career advisor you'd like to speak to, and we have different ones for different verticals, as I mentioned. We will conduct a session either one-on-one with you or in a group setting, right? So sometimes we do teleconferencing through a video call like this, or sometimes it's informal copy sessions like myself as well, right? We hear out your aspirations, we hear out your concerns. We try to address them neutrally and the best way that we know how. And know this, okay? Each of the career advisors, we have actually all gone for some sort of coaching, okay? And so we're all certified, okay, to do this. And thanks to WSG, we've gone for a course to know, how to take you through and how to best advise you as well. I like what one of my fellow career advisors said, right? We are like a looking glass into the industry that you're hoping to join. Any questions that you have prior to making a career switch, we are here to clarify. We are here to magnify, right? Whether it be challenges, opportunities, or potential pitfalls that you may face. Okay, so if you are in any one of these stages, okay, feel free to approach us whether you're looking to join a new vertical, new industry, or a new subsector. Like for example, in ICT, there's various subsectors, right? There is analytics, there is digital marketing, there's even cloud computing. So think about the different new roles, or just pondering over making a career switch, right? So this can be very applicable to you, joining this program. So So we can scan this QR code, to find out more about this program, and we look forward to getting in touch with you. Thank you. Thank you, Jahan.
Thank you. Thank you, Albert. Let me just take back the screen share again. Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Albert. And like what Albert shared, it's really encouraging that, people like him are stepping up, right, to really give back to the community and volunteer their time. So we're always grateful for, people like him that are willing to share their own experience, right? Okay. Next up, we have our panel discussion. Let me see. Okay, let me just remove. Okay, we have our panel discussion, and we have a very, very exciting lineup of panelists here today. Other than Dion and Albert that you've already heard from, we also have an interesting duo. So this is an employer and employee duo. So Fidella herself is also a career switcher, and Sharon is her employer. So Fidella has been through, mid-career pathway programs and many of the programs that you might be interested in as a career switcher yourself, right? And Sharon is part of the SGTech community. Now, I didn't say this earlier, but SGTech is a non-profit association that represents employers. So we have about 1,000 employers under our base. And we work with employers very closely to encourage them to take on career switchers, and we create programs that make it easier for employers to do that, right? And Sharon is an excellent example of, being very passionate herself, right? She's an employer, right? But she volunteers her time with SGTech as well as part of the talent committee in order to create programs that can help career switchers, like Fidella, like Albert, right? And last but not least, we have Yen, right? Yen Chong. Yen is the executive director within SGTech, and her role today is to be the moderator of the session, and she'll be, facilitating the questions. So again, a reminder, if you're interested in asking questions to, our very interesting group of panelists today, on any of the topics, right, that have been talked about, do put your questions into the Q&A function, and we will try our best to get to it. Okay, without further ado, let me just hand over the time to Yen and the rest of our panelists.
Thanks, Jahan, and welcome everyone, and hope that you're enjoying your lunch while, enjoying the conversations or the sharing that we've had so far. So as what Zihan has mentioned, we have a really good lineup of panelists this afternoon. And also everyone has a really great story to tell. I think personally for myself, I would consider myself a career switcher as well. I've joined SGTech about 3 months now. I have always been, I guess, from a private sector. I've been in agencies, from marketing to advertising to media. And I'm now actually in an association industry, and also more than that, a tech industry as well. In fact, I think I had my fair share of questions when I joined, when people asked me, so why did you switch? Was it difficult switching? How did it go? What is the interview process like? So I would say that definitely, to build on all the sharing so far, definitely, I think I would say that, I think it's fair to say that all of us would have actually encountered a similar experience to actually consider a switch of career within our lifetimes, and even more further as we go. And as what Dion has said, we'll probably live much longer than our parents' generation. So I can't even really say that I'm going to be retiring soon. It's probably like, what is the next career, right? So I think I would like to first kick off by asking this question to any of our panelists. What is the biggest risk you have ever taken in your career or in your work, and what did you learn from it? So anyone could take it. Anyone?
Okay, I guess I'll start. So my name is Fidella. So I'm also a mid-career switcher. I think one of the biggest risks I took was doing a part-time degree while studying. So it felt like back then I wasn't thinking of ICT at all. I was just thinking like, oh, I need to eventually pivot my career to grow to a management role, just acquiring new skills. And I mean, it may sound like a menial challenge to some of us, but it wasn't very easy because it meant working long hours just to hit deadlines during the day to go to work, but then also me going past the bedtime just to complete schoolwork. So I had my days where school wasn't that great, but also work wasn't that great as you try to juggle both. and there wasn't much recreational time with your friends or your family. And I think there was a period of time when nobody saw me at all because I was just trying to, juggle work and school. But one thing that I learned from that was that, I remembered my why, like why did I want to go back to school, and started to do goal setting, which I felt was very important, like putting out goals which are attainable and it's measurable as well, like only doing classes as much as I can, or time management and asking for help when I need it. So I think, going back to school or even taking courses may be difficult for some of us with family or with kids, especially now when you apply for jobs and they're saying, hey, you need to have all these skills to compete with, someone who just graduated last year who has 10 times more skills. But it shouldn't stop anyone, because skills are transferable, but going back to school with those tools will actually kind of elevate your experience when you put yourself out there. So I think for me, just remember your why, and going back to school wasn't as bad, because eventually there were people who also wanted to study, and that was when I realized herd mentality wasn't that bad. So yeah, that is my comment.
Thanks, Fidella. That's definitely very inspiring, and I think certainly, I think you landed on a really important point. I think when you know the whys, right, then I think all the hows and everything else, will fall into place. So anyone else would like to share?
Okay, maybe I also chip in as well. So for myself, early on in my career, I was working for the telco side, right? Working for two of the biggest telcos here in Singapore, and at that time, it was nice and safe. They were still in primary infancy of the industry. Contract switching was the rage. In terms of the consumers when they saw the latest phones. So there was a high demand in the telco space, right? So it was nice and safe. But someone came along and told me, hey, there's a consulting role on offer. Would you like to think about it, right? And it was a bit scary because it's different working on the organization side versus working on the vendor side, right? Totally different type of personality, skill set, aptitude as well that you need to have, and that was my perception. So I was very apprehensive, but then I think I thought very carefully about it, and decided if I needed to grow, then I needed to step into this as well. What do I mean by grow? Grow means not just in terms of the hard skills, right? But also in terms of the soft skills, right? And I'm talking about the ability, things that you don't pick up from school. I think that's what Fidella mentioned earlier. Soft skills like presenting in front of an audience, thinking on your feet. So these were things that actually I picked up and I adapted and I developed when I eventually went into consulting. And the bonus aspect of that was so I was 5 years, I was at telco, and then I did another 5 years in consulting. I traveled around the region, Southeast Asia. So that was the bonus, right? The regional exposure, different cultures, and also understanding how to work with different different organizations in different cultures as well. It's quite different, right? Knowing how their cultures actually influence the business processes that you want to roll out, the initiatives that you want to do, and you have to be very careful about this when you're consulting, when you're from the vendor side. So those were important skill sets that I took with me, and I don't regret that switch. I think the only regret I had was, hey, why didn't I pick up consulting much earlier on in my career? It would definitely have made me even better as a person as well.
Yeah, there's always the saying, right? It's like better late than never. So I think you're still very much early in that curve. So thanks, Albert. I think I want to kind of maybe kind of switch to Sharon for a while, because I think obviously we spoke about risks, but I think also, you know, for you as an entrepreneur, I think, you know, I would say probably within your journey, right, there's a lot of risks that you're taking, and also interesting to hear about the kind of support network that you have along with this journey.
Okay, maybe, so I talk about biggest risk, right? It's really more in my work. So for us, each time as a company, when we think about developing another new product to solve a new problem, so essentially it's very easy to say, hey, I want to create something, right? I want to solve a problem. But at the end of the day, we are running an organization, you hire people, there's P&L involved and things like that. So we're basically diving into uncharted waters. And sometimes we also do not know whether the market acceptance for the product is there or not. So, and you will also meet customers or prospect customers who claim that they kind of like it. And you just dive in and do all the investment. And then the next thing you realize that when you ask them to pay, they don't want to pay for it. So I think these are the risks that we have gone through for the years that we've been running an organization. But I think what I also learned from that whole process is each time there's always a product launch failure or whatsoever, right? We always learn to be very open-minded. So we have even invested 2 years on something where it's an uncharted water for us. We actually developed a consumer service, which is something quite different from what our company usually do. And we paid a lot for that investor, but in the end we said, okay, let's close the business because we are just not getting the customers we need. But what we did was we pivoted, and then we realized that, hey, you know, we learned from it and we applied the learnings from that. And actually most of our team members, they acquired a new type of skill set. And when we were on our new enterprise products, they were able to apply that R&D and skill set into it. So I feel that there's nothing wasted for every failure that we encounter. There's always a learning point, and actually we always build on and we actually get better.
Thanks, Sharon. And I think you used the word pivot, and I know that pivot has been such a big buzzword, right, since COVID. But you know, in reality, that has always been a word, you know, in terms of, like you said, taking risks, etc. So I want to take this next question to Dion. So I guess what I'd like to hear from you is what are some of the trends that you think that's going to make a big impact on jobs, and actually more importantly, how do individuals what are the changes that they need to make or consider to face this future and to be prepared for this new trend?
Thank you, Ian, for the question. So thinking about the future and what we've seen, you know, working with employer and also individuals who's looking for a job or thinking about upskilling in their leadership skills, I think it's important that we continue to stay agile and nimble, open-minded, not too fixated on our approach. And actually reflecting back, you know, last year when we had to move all of our classes to online, you know, I was fixated on our classroom approach. You know, I didn't want to change. So, you know, but once you adopt that mindset, you know, you say, hey, it can be done. You know, the possibility is there. Then you started to learn, you know, what do you need to have to able to make that change. So being agile is important. I do think having that circle of coaches, you know, career coaches, community, SG Tech, you know, workshop, you know, having people to encourage you, to help you to navigate is very important. It is something that I did not have. You know, I mentioned about my career switch 11 years ago. I felt very alone. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know anyone who can give me advice. So I think having that community, it's great what you guys are doing today, giving out resources, and then have a learner mindset. I mean, for me, yeah, I have a full-time job. I'm still learning. I'm constantly doing DIY learning. I just enroll with a class. You know, I'm doing another one in May. So I'm also learning because I want to find out, you know, what is needed. What are some of the new things, you know, digital things that I need to equip myself. So having that learner mindset, you know, these are the three things that, you know, I think would be important for the future.
Well, for sure. And I think, Dion, I think you touched on a really important point is to adopt this learning mindset. And I think if we shift gears specifically to the ICT industry, because that's what we're really talking about today, right? About people wanting to switch careers, not just any career, but to a career that they may think that they do not have the necessary skill sets. But obviously, as we evolve, you know, as we are moving into a very everyday tech kind of environment, I think this is definitely an area that a lot of people want to get into. And certainly they are finding that perhaps, you know, there's some barriers. So what advice, I guess, in this case, I will go back to you, Sharon. What advice would you give, you know, anyone who wanting to switch to the ICT industry, you know, as a mid-career change or just as a career switch?
Okay, so I think a lot of times I also saw some questions, by the way. They're quite similar in the sense that many of them also say that, hey, you know, ICT is always looking for programming skills, and what if I don't? What do I do? I mean, Fidella is one good example for us. She's not doing a very tech heavy role. Yeah, so there are actually a lot of digital roles in the ICT industry. So there are also other areas that I think sometimes back I also heard Albert also covered things like UX and so on. So there are what we call tech-like roles or business analyst roles. So a lot of us actually come from perhaps a more business background. So for example, even myself, when I co-founded the company, but to be frank, I have zero IT skill. A bit of maybe courses that I learned, but I kind of forget all the programming stuff. So what do? You know, I think what's important is that we must have a very open mind, be agile. That means we are very willing to learn as and when we work with people. So in the course of me trying to pick up IT as a business, I actually take on more in the marketing business role. So ideally, for some of you who are trying to move into an IT industry, there are certain ways, like for example, you can join an ICT firm and work in the non-tech roles. That's one. Another one would be you see whether you can work in some transition roles or tech-like roles, maybe business analyst, where you take business requirements and then you work with the technical people. UX is one of them. Like actually, in the past, business analyst is the word. But over time, business analysts also become UX designers. But to be a UX designer, you do need to go and learn a bit about the proper framework of how people do UX. But again, I think with our business background, you know, you ask a lot of what we call common sense questions. You ask about how to be empathetic to end users, and you actually think through the processes and see how you can actually simplify it in the process of developing an application. So in that way, you don't need to be learning a programming language in order to learn in a tech role. There are also a lot of digital marketing role where you deal with data. So some of you may come from, let's say, accounting background, financial background, where day in, day out, you've been dealing with a lot of data. So actually, you are very used to looking at data. And the question here is really, besides looking at them as numbers, what can you make a business decision out of this number? What can you inform your bosses to do to pivot the business? So in a lot of tech companies, especially called the B2C businesses that you see today, whether is it your Lazada, Shopee, e-commerce sites, and so on, they actually build their business and pivot some of their offerings according to the data that they see. So, there's actually a lot of roles in data analytics and things like that. So sometimes you can take some courses, sometimes you can actually try to work in some organizations which are open to let you try in those type of roles. So there are actually many roles in ICT industry to try on.
Thanks, Sharon. Actually, it just reminds me also what Dion shared earlier, you know, in terms of that little matrix about, you know, if you actually find yourself very interested in an area, like for example, as you mentioned, like data scientists, right? So if you suddenly find yourself really interested in data and you don't have that skill gap, or rather you don't have that skills, then that actually, you know, could possibly point you to a direction of the kind of courses you can take, you know, to train yourself in that area since you're already very interested in data. So I guess on that, I want to kind of switch gears to Albert, just to share, because you know, you're a career switcher yourself. So what are some of the challenges that you face and how would you encourage, others in a similar situation now?
Thank you. Yeah, so in terms of career switching, so I was saying earlier, I'm part of, I benefited from the PCP program, professional conversion program. So what it was a training for Salesforce, and the good thing was the organization that provided the sponsorship for the training was also open to charting not just a role, but not just defining a role, but also charting a path for the person coming in, right? And what do I mean by charting a path? Means that career development, career prospects, right, in the company, how that person will figure in terms of the organization's medium and longer term business development plans. So that's really important. I think when you're thinking about switching to another industry, or something which you've not been working with previously, when you go for an interview, it's also important to ask the right questions, okay, to the person opposite the table. Find out what are the medium and longer term plans the organization have for this particular role. Make sure it's sustainable. And make sure that you are able to add value from your other skill sets that you bring to the table. Just to address the earlier question that Sharon has mentioned as well. People always ask this: how do we transition into this other domain when companies are only looking for experienced people? Well, be selective about the roles that you're looking for, because not all roles are looking for very experienced people. Be selective, but selective based on what? Selective based on your own skill sets that you bring, your own experience. I know Sharon mentioned about BA skill sets. So basically, if you have worked with stakeholders before, cross-functional, working with them to collect requirements, that is a transferable skill set. If you have sales marketing background, that is a transferable skill set. If you have project management background, that is a transferable skill set into ICT. So never discount this, and keep an open mindset.
Thanks, Albert. Fidella, what about you? I think you did share about, obviously you were studying and you were working at the same time. Would you share with us, I guess, how do you overcome some of these challenges? I mean, especially, maybe psychologically, mentally, how do you prep yourself?
Yeah, so I guess you kind of associate at least for me, when I got retrenched, I associate the loss of job with loss of identity. Because for most of us, we associate our value with our job. So it was a very tough period for me. And then especially when you look for jobs that they start to get lesser and lesser, and then the demands for the qualifications or the technical knowledge seems to get more, even though the role remains the same. So I tried to be positive where I can, but I connected with friends or family who could help me with, looking through my CV. And then I also started doing what Dion said, is doing a gap analysis of what skills that I was missing. Of course, it was tough. You just have to keep pushing on, right? So there was no better time to kind of upskill yourself. So I realized there were a couple of skills that I was missing. I think I'm pretty good at some roles, but I was just missing technical abilities in others. So I decided to, fill up the gap and then try to start applying from there. Because like what Sharon said, I have no technical background at all. So I'm in a very light tech role, but I have a lot of interest in writing and design. So I took a lot of data analytics courses and digital marketing, and I was able to combine those two. So I think that helped me a lot in my current role, because I was able to kind of do my job with the previous soft skills I have. So I think, try to be mindful of yourself. Mindfulness is important too. So I think even though it is a hard time, but I think it's important to maintain their well-being too. So.
Well, thanks, Fidella. I really appreciate your open sharing. I'm sure a lot of us, and also those who have tuned in, would have similar experiences with you, especially, you know, when we're trying to, you know, get in between jobs, or, you know, especially those of us who may have been retrenched like yourself. Yes, definitely been a tough time. So we do have quite a few questions from the Q&A chat function box, but before I go to them, I do want to actually have a bit of a chat with you and Sharon. It's really interesting here, as we all know, you know, Sharon actually hired you, and you mentioned, you know, how, you know, you didn't have certain skills, you know, initially with ICT. So I would say first to Sharon, if I may, so why did you hire Fidella? And what has helped her succeed in her job?
Okay, I mean, to be honest, I mentioned that we sometimes are into new products and services, right? So we are also chartering some uncharted waters. So I think we are also forming a team, and we felt that we are prepared to take in someone quite fresh. So that's one. But when we say we're taking on someone that's quite fresh, we also look out for certain traits in that person. Like for example, we also noticed that Fidella has worked for a couple of years. So the transferable skill is that she's definitely experienced. She's dealt with people. So I think her people management skill is something that appealed to me, because she needs to deal with certain customers while she's doing some digital work. Yeah, so that's important. Other thing is the first impression of Fidella was her positive attitude and her growth mindset. And of course, she shared, she went through certain, perhaps like depression over, you know, why there's less and less job and things like that. But it did not occur to me like she was quite depressed in that sense. But when we talk to her, we feel that she has a very positive attitude. And she's also being very authentic, like when she shared during job interview, what she can do and what she can't, and what she's currently trying to address her gaps. So I feel that as an interviewee, being authentic is important, because you may bring with you certain experience, and as a potential employer, I'm happy to hear, and also open-minded to see what are the transferable skills. And sometimes even during an interview, I'll tell you, hey, maybe you have this gap, and we'll probably give you a certain timeline to fill this gap, and these are some of the things you can do. So so I hope that for any candidates, they will always be more authentic in their conversation with a potential employer. And the other thing that also struck me was she was actually with the career support group that SG Tech has worked with WSG on. And I noticed generally the people in the career support group, they have gone through a process of supporting one another. And the mindset has also improved over time. So it actually helps, even as a potential employer, for me to look out for candidates over there. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. I think I can attest to that, that even, you know, on the panel, you know, Fidella is very authentic, you know, the way that she's sharing. So now, Fidella, to you, is what attracted you? I mean, obviously, you joined Inspire Tech for 6 months now?
Yeah, it's already been 6 months. That's pretty quick, because I remember it feels like yesterday when I was in the career support group, and then there was a fake interview to practice, and then I had Sharon. So I didn't know that, oh, after that I'll be working with Sharon. So that was pretty neat.
Well, that's not bad. Did we plan that, Suhan?
I think my career coach planned that, but I guess it was helpful too.
Talking about that interview, right? It was quite interesting because as a potential employer, I told the career coach that I'll just give very authentic feedback, and sometimes on the spot, I'll just tell them, oh, this is the vibe you're giving me, so not very acceptable. So maybe something that you want to work on it, you know, things like that. So some of them, they managed to take it quite positively, and they probably work on it. And I also heard, I was just catching up, I heard after that program, quite a substantial number of them actually found a job. So I'm not sure about the numbers. Maybe Zihan can attest to that.
Yeah, okay, sorry, let me just show myself. Out of the group of 19, 17 of them managed to find a job.
Oh, that's great. I mean, that's really great. And I think this also goes to show how important it is, you know, I guess firstly for us to reach out to say we need help. You know, I think we are dealing in a very, I would say, interesting times, you know, because I think, you know, I always like to say this, you know, even to my friends and, you know, friends with children especially, I said that, you know, just fast forward another 20 years, I think this next 20 years is going to be very different from the last 20. right? I think we need to really keep learning. And I think, you know, what we've heard so far from everyone is the ability to actually really reflect, to really ask themselves what is it they want, and then to be able to reach out, to get help, to help themselves, you know, to get training, and really, you know, to be part of some of these support groups and networks that's now available, which is really heartening to hear. So maybe for now, why don't we take some questions from the box? Okay, so I would say that, okay, there is one from Willie Wong. And his question is, would you advise a career switcher in his 50s without any academic qualifications to pursue higher studies? It largely seems that employers are particularly looking to hire somebody who is younger and a graduate. Does it mean that paper qualification is above working experience? Does it mean that older workers without paper qualification less talented? So there's a few parts to this question. So I'm just going to have that question first, because the second part is about how WSG can help. So maybe I'll put it to anyone on the panel to take this question. Anyone? So I'm going to arrow someone. So I think Sharon, would you like to give us some your point of view on that?
Sorry, I was also a bit distracted. You were saying, okay, I was also trying to read the question from Willie. He has actually a few questions.
Yeah, so I was just the first part that I was actually posing to you. So essentially, I think someone in his 50s, you know, and I think this is really about work experience versus qualifications, or in this case, academia, right? And I think we've also spoken about this a lot within SG Tech. I think what we're also saying that within the tech industry right now, right, we are also saying that while we have people who are trained, we may have people who are trained but not as experienced, right? Because in a lot of cases, you know, I think especially in some of the conversations we're having in terms of the tech development right now, you do say that we do want people who have experience, you know, and in this case, to then be able to leverage tech, you know, to enable us to, for example, when we talk about digitalization a lot, right? We talk about digital transformation a lot. Yeah.
So I think there's one area I thought, okay, to be honest, I mean, firstly, I run an SME. So for SME, number one, most of the SMEs that I know, I mean, in my chapter for the Singapore Enterprise chapter that I'm chairing in SG Tech, many of us don't really look for the paper qualifications because, I mean, because Willie also mentioned he's probably in his 50s. So by the time you're in your 50s, right, I think as a potential employer, we don't really look at your paper qualifications, that's number one. But rather, we really look at your past experiences and what kind of roles that you've been in. And then, of course, besides that, then if, let's say, recently you have been if you're trying to work in the ICT industry, for example, recently, what are some of the courses that you have taken? But I also want to put a caveat here, right? Taking a course doesn't mean you will immediately land on that job. That role seems to be matched for. Because sometimes you also have to find a match with potential employers on their readiness to train you. I must say that there will be some employers that are not prepared to train, and some employers they are. So that process, I cannot guarantee you that today you sign up for this company, you will get one that is prepared to train. And one of the suggestions I had, I was just also trying to answer on the chat on the Q&A was, you may want to try looking for companies that are offering the SG United Traineeship program. Because when they apply for that program, they are already committed to train people. I mean, to be frank, government do subsidize companies for that. And if they are not prepared to do that, then that's not fair. Right? So I would largely say that companies that are offering that in general, but I won't say it's 100%. In general, they are more prepared to train people. And the whole scheme was really about encouraging companies that, look, government is subsidizing us quite a lot. And as a potential employer, you are having probably an excess capacity to work in a certain role, and you train that person up. And from then on, hopefully that person is taking this as an internship period. So today, the internship is no longer limited to, we call it the young undergraduates or your poly students or IT students, right? Internship can be offered to even people who have worked for 10, 20, 30 years. Because as long as you're joining a new industry, we believe that there will be something so new that you have to learn from scratch all over again, and we probably treat you like an intern. But what we're happy to know is that you have other skills that you can bring along, perhaps like your interpersonal skill, the way you appreciate project management and time management will be much better than maybe a newbie. So these are some advices I would give to a potential job seeker. Yeah, thank you.
No, thanks, Sharon. Anyone else wants to add? Maybe Dion, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Maybe I just add on. I mean, I agree with what Albert also said earlier is, sometimes it's not every job is right for you. So you as a job seeker has to find that right fit. And, and asking the questions, and Sharon mentioned rightfully, there are some companies that they just have a culture of they want to invest in people. They have time to train. Maybe they have more resources. I remember when I did my career switch, when I joined the company, I was trained for 6 months. I didn't have to do anything, but they trained me. So I was very fortunate to join a company like that. They invested in me. And there are companies that maybe they don't have the resources and they're not at a stage where they can really train or have the program available. So you have to find the right match, asking the questions, be prepared, knowing what you want, going back to Fidella said, the why and all of that, it's both matching. They are looking for the right candidate and you are looking for the right employer.
Great. Thanks, Dion.
Yeah.
Sorry, Albert, you want to chime in?
Yeah, if I can chime in also at this other part of William's question. So William was also asking, what can WSG do to help them, people who are, in their mid-50s, and are looking for career transition. So I'm not sure if you're aware. So WSG has this program, which I'm part of. So the Volunteer Career Advisors is one example of a program where WSG actually sets up to help people like yourself to, after you've done the courses, to understand, what kind of roles would be a good match for those kind of courses together with your experience. And I think if you go to the website, right, you could also find out that they also have career matching services. They, they do events, networking sessions as well. So, and these, I think, are held at various places, including the Lifelong Learning Center over in Paya Lebar. So I think it's important to know that's all these resources that are available, apart from, the training that is on the portal. There is these resources that are available, even some of these one-to-one as well. So WSG VCA, Volunteer Career Advisors Initiative, is an example of a one-to-one session where an advisor like myself can actually have a session with someone like yourself, William, and understand your needs and how to give you better information.
Oh, thanks, Albert. And I just want to assure everyone that, even though it seems like we're answering just Willie's question, right? But I think it's because there are other questions that actually are running along the same theme. So I hope for those of you who are also asking questions around, finding being a career switcher over 50s or over 40s, you find the responses so far useful to you. I do have a question right now that I want to kind of pose to Fidella, because I think this is quite an interesting one. This question is around being a mid-career switcher to land the very first job in ICT industry, which is your case. So the question is, what kind of companies should we focus on, MNC or SME? I know you're with an SME, and I think it's actually quite interesting because basically, I think firstly, it seems like, and this the person who posed this question says that it seems like startups are looking for candidates with hands-on skills, and MNC are looking for candidates with related educational backgrounds. And you know, obviously, as candidates, you don't always fulfill both of these requirements. So I guess we'd love to hear your point of view on that. You're on mute. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So
Okay.
I think everyone thinks when you want to join ICT that you need to join a big MNC. So I think that's the bit where I will have to say not exactly. So because with a smaller company, like maybe with Inspire Tech, it's smaller and it's more dynamic. So it gives me an opportunity to kind of learn on the job and wear a lot of hats, which for MNCs may not be the case because you need to be extremely, need to know a lot more than, you need to have maybe deep knowledge, but with an SME, you can show that you want to learn. And then there is more flexibility and direct access to the boss, which I think I have the opportunity to have because there's fewer layers of management and you can learn from the boss too. And for me, I find it easier to learn from Sharon directly and interact with decision makers without going through other layers. And in addition, with an SME, there's more visibility because you can see whether your work or what you've learned has a measurable impact on the project or the company that you're working with. And then if there isn't, that's when you can address it right there instead of MNC because there's so many departments and so many other roles. You do not know how much impact you have. So especially with someone with no ICT background, with an SME, you can see if how much you've brought into the company. Then you can see if there's a gap, you can try to fill it. And to answer the second bit about, you know, educational backgrounds, I think the willingness to learn, it seems it resonates more with SMEs when they see that you have a growth mindset and then you try to show value and passion that you can bring value to the organization. So I think they're a bit more accepting than maybe an MNC where they're a bit more gung-ho about your qualifications. So I think that's at least my experience. So I hope, I mean, if you do look for an organization, I mean, I would recommend an SME just for that case where it's more dynamic. But if you do encounter an MNC who's more accepting, then, well, that's great too. But it's very important to just have a growth mindset and yeah.
Thanks. And I think before I let you go, there's one question here in the chat box that's directed at you. It basically says, please advise again, which program did you complete to land your current job? I think you're serving as an inspiration to many, Fidella.
Which current program? So actually, you mean the study bit or the?
It's just a question about which programs did you complete?
Okay. So something that I realized when I had a couple of friends also got retrenched when I told them there are so many resources at WSG and there's so many open courses, even by Google, that people do not know that it's free. So I actually went on Coursera. I some courses that were free, and I also, one thing that people do not know is SkillsFuture does, you can redeem courses with Udemy if you are keen to take those courses. So I took a data analytics course and marketing too on Udemy, and I claimed it on SkillsFuture. I did it at my own time and pace. I mean, I started at 9 a.m., I finished at 5. I made it look like I'm still working. And then, well, at the same time, I did start time to find a job. So, I mean, it took me 6 months, but there are courses out there. You just have to find it. But I do recommend going on SkillsFuture and the resources by WSG because there's a lot of valuable resources there that not many people know, but it's right there. So, yeah.
Thank you. Well, I think on that, we will be talking about the programs and also answering to some of your questions in regards to PCP, etc. Towards the end of this session. So again, it's not that we're neglecting those questions, but I think Suhan will come back, after we're done our Q&A to actually address some of these questions and also to share some of the other opportunities, like, in terms of coaches or career support groups that we have. So I guess what I would like to do is, I think we're close to a bit of a wrap up, wait for the Q&A. So what I would like to do is to have our panelists just leave us, basically, if you're going to summarize the best career advice you've ever received, or the best career advice that you want to give, what would it be? It could be, you know, anything. It could be what your ingredients is needed, or anything. Maybe let's start with you first, Albert.
Okay, sure. So for me, I would say that, and this applies not just to your career search, right? It also applies to life in general. And I think nothing that happens to you in your life is ever wasted. And actually, I saw this it's interesting, you know, because I saw this online. Then, you know who was mentioned? It was mentioned by Oprah. Right, one of most precious people on the planet. And I think that's so true, right? Whether you've been through a retrenchment, a restructuring, or, you know, some challenge in your life, everything happens for a reason. And I guess the way that you can face your next challenge is to remember what kind of lessons you can learn and how to apply them onto other challenges going forward. And yeah, that is my motto, and I guess that's something that I would like to share as well.
Thanks, Albert. Thanks for that. Dion?
Yeah, I can't agree more for what Albert said. It's so important. And I just want to add on, perhaps, you know, for me, it is more about looking inward, knowing yourself, having those reflective moments, knowing your strength, your value, your purpose, you know, then find the right things for you. It will come. And then, you know, you can be excited, you can be engaged again. It can happen many more times, you know, actually in our career as we live until 100 years old.
Cheers to that. Thanks, Dion. And Fidella?
I think, well, to quote Sun Tzu, even though I am not a fan of war, is in chaos there is opportunity. So I think chaos is uncomfortable for most of us, and I think we try, when we feel discomfort, we try to get through it as fast as we can. But when you're hasty, you don't make the right decisions. So like finding a job quickly just because, you know, you've been in that role for so many years, or yeah, that kind of, or just because it's there, even though you're curious to try something else. So I think when you feel fear, and I think that's a good thing, because that means you're out of your comfort zone. So just try to step out of your comfort zone, and then maybe you found something awesome. So who knows?
Thanks, Fidella. And I think, you know, how rightly put, right? And in some cases, like I said, as you guys have put, chaos is internal. But obviously what we've been through the last, you know, year and still going through, the chaos is happening externally as well. So I think change is imminent. So Sharon, why don't your last words to actually end the Q&A for us? Your advice, please.
Sometimes I like to do a parallel between people finding jobs with me finding business, right? It's the same, right? So there are days where, you know, we do well in business, but there are days things are just very dry and we don't have the number of customers that we need to even meet certain numbers that we want. Then what do? We get disappointed. But again, I think we put on our thinking caps, we become very flexible, we think of ways. Like if one door is closed, you find another door that is open, right? So those are the things that keep us grounded and be positive. I mean, to be frank, in my whole journey of running a business for 20 years, nothing was smooth. I have my ups and downs, but each time when we hit a low, sometimes for us, we pivot a new product. So think of yourself, if you cannot find a job in this particular area, then you try to find a job in another area, right? Maybe you'll find a new beginning for yourself. So it happens for me all the time. To be frank, I came from a background where I prefer to be more structured. But throughout the years of running a tech business, I learned what is really called flexible. So that's one. The other thing is also, I think you need to also develop a collaborative mindset and a problem-solving mindset. So especially for us in the tech industry, we are really looking out for people who has that mindset. very problem solving. Like when we have a problem here, how do we solve it? We search on the internet, we talk to people, we work with different people, we tap on each other's skills rather than, you know, like just say, oh, I've not learned this before, so yeah, I cannot solve this problem. No, there's no such thing called you have never learned, you can't solve the problem. So, and one more last word is try to be more digital savvy, because a lot of you are asking, how can you join the ICT industry? I welcome people to join the industry, because the reality is our industry is in need of people, whether is it the tech-like roles to the very technical roles. And last but not least, something very scary, be prepared to always value add, because especially in the ICT industry and the type of roles that we have, over time, with all this digitalization, where, you know, the new way of future of work, a lot of jobs do not necessarily need to be in Singapore. And hirers have a choice to hire people outside Singapore. And the reality is the population around our country have much more young people than we are. We are an aging population. So that is a hard truth, right? And there are a lot of young people out there, whether it's Indonesians, Vietnamese, they are all learning programming. And they're all more than ready to offer their skills to some of the potential hirers, whether is it from Singapore or the MNCs that you know from America and Japan and so on. So what does it leave us with? So we really need to keep up. And if you don't have a programming skill today, don't feel discouraged. Think of what other ways you can join a tech industry. So last but not least, be digital savvy. Whatever you do on a daily basis, whether is it the tools that you use, whether is it a software tool, social media platform that you use, e-commerce sites that you use, don't just use it as a consumer. Ask questions like, how do they go about doing it? And the more you dive deeper, actually you realize that you get better and better, and you appreciate the ICT industry more and more. And over time, when you go into an interview, the interviewer will know whether are you the curious type or are you not. So if you want to join the ICT, be curious. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Sharon. I think all really great advice, everyone. You know, I think about being reflective, you know, about, you know, having a growth mindset, a learning mindset, curiosity. And I would also say that, you know, before I hand it over back to Zihan, I would also say that, you know, for all of you who turned up, you know, you are curious. You know, you are wanting to find, you know, what is this, and is this possibly, you know, the industry for you? And as what everyone on the panel has said, you know, we definitely welcome everyone to continue to explore. You've heard that there's a lot of support groups that's available. There's a lot of programs that's available. So of course, on that note, I think this is the best time for me to pass it back to Zihan, who's going to share some of these with you.
Okay, thanks, Yen, and all our panelists. I know there are a lot of questions on the programs, and as Yen rightly pointed out, you know, that's where I'm going to be sharing a bit more about. What we really wanted from the panel is for them to share their life experience, and all of them have been through journeys. I wouldn't say the same, but at least, you know, going through similar challenges that some of you may be facing today, and that's what we hope to elicit from the panel, you know, for them to share their own insights, right, in how they've gone through this process themselves. And you know, we'll be sharing now on the various initiatives that we hope, you know, can help you. I'll be able to comment on some of the questions as I go along, right, specific to the programs, but not all. I'll do my best. And I just want to say that there's a lot going on out there, right? There are a lot of programs available, trying to help as many people as possible, right? Will it help everyone? Maybe not, right? Or probably not. But that's where, you know, we need to keep trying with different alternatives. Okay. And just a note, all these programs are meant for people without skills, right? So that's specifically where we were targeting with the programs that we are highlighting today. Okay, so let me go through very briefly. They are bucketed into three categories. One is jobs, then the second one is traineeships, and the third one is skills, right? So they are calling this whole thing from WSG a jobs and skills package, right? So the first is SG United Jobs. And that's, you know, the most straightforward, right? You know, we are helping people to land new jobs and facilitating that process. So what's happening is that WSG is running a lot of career fairs. Behind the scenes, there are a lot of engagement of employers, right? For them to participate in this career fair. So don't forget, when employers go for these things as well, they're actually taking time out of their schedules in order to be there, right? If they weren't interested to begin with, they wouldn't even participate, right? So at least, there's a lot of engagement that's going on with employers, try to encourage them to be part of this, right? And to narrow the gap, so to speak, so that it's not just a cold submission of a CV. So, check out all these career fairs. Also go to My Careers Future, right? That there are specific job roles that are labeled SG United jobs. So hopefully, right, that narrows it a little bit, right? To make it slightly easier, for you to land those opportunities. And I wanted to talk specifically about PCP. And this is a slide that, SG Tech uses and WSG to really try to convince employers as well, right? We try to encourage employers to take on opportunities, with career switches, right, by offering them jobs. And usually SG Tech's approach in partnership with WSG is that, hey, let's develop programs together that are tech-like in nature. That's why Fidella kept talking about like tech, right? That's what we are getting at. So we want to make it as easy as possible for career switchers to transition into this role, right? So we encourage employers, to join us in this program, right? Obviously, employers have no obligation, so we're very grateful to the employers that have come on board. I just want to address a couple of common misconceptions here, right? That first, from the employer angle, that the grant is all it takes, right? So grant is not everything to employers. So, as job seekers, sometimes we also need to understand that, it's not always about the grant that WSG provides to employers. And I never talk to employers about grants, right? I always tell them about, what's the intangible benefits that you can get out of this, how you can spot diamonds in the rough, right? With career switchers. And many of them, are warm up to the idea and willing to give career switchers a shot. The second misconception I want to address from the job seeker side, right, is that PCP, or the Professional Conversion Program, is the kind of program that you apply for, and then you'll be assigned a job after that, right? But that really isn't the case, right? What it does is that it's kind of, this is not a clear statement, but it's kind of like a waiting list, so to speak, right? And when there are opportunities arise, you'll be the first to know, right? Or you'll be trying to match to these opportunities as they come along, right? So the Professional Conversion Program is not a train and place program, meaning you sign up for this program, then you go through something, right? Then you're placed with a job. That's usually under SG United Skills. What this is actually a place and train, meaning that the job has to be offered to you first, right? The employer is willing to say, okay, I'm going to take a chance on you, right? I'm going to hire you like I hire a normal employee, right? But what we've done, by creating programs, is that we put the training in place in a very structured way, put the grant funding in place, so it reduces the risk for employers to take in people without skills, right? A third common misconception is that you need very strong educational qualifications, right? That's really not the case at all. In fact, for digital sales, we have zero attachment, zero criteria for educational qualification. We have people without diplomas even, right? Without degrees, right? Who are on board the program. We have people who are above 60 years old, two of them, the two oldest candidates above 60, right, that we placed on the PCP. So that's a program so these are the things that we are trying to do, right, to narrow the gap for job placements. So PCP is one of them. Then we have the SG United Jobs Initiative, right? This is where we do direct matching. So we have one headcount now, that's Nancy, so you can contact her here. So we have one person to try to help you out, right, in the tech space. So be nice to her. She can't, even if 100 of you email her today, she's going to struggle, right? So there are thousands, right, in Singapore looking for jobs. We try to make a dent. WSG also trying its best. He has a whole network of, career advisors, full-time career coaches, right, that you also can tap on. So the second pillar is what they call traineeships, right? So there's a couple of different types of traineeships. First is a company attachment. So this is where you are attached to a host organization, where you, during this period, it's not considered full-time employment. So this is considered an attachment or a traineeship, right? Where at least you can get some experience, right, during this period. And this is also subsidized by the government, right? The second type comes with training, right? So you're attached to the company and you are also trained by the company. So this is a more specific type of program, right? That, certain companies are offering. Third, this is more for fresh grads. So this is the SG United traineeship. So for mid-careers, it will be the former, right? The mid-career pathways, but they are both the traineeship concept. Finally, we have skills. So this is what Fidella talked about a lot, right? A lot of training programs out there, they are already pre-subsidized. There's SG United skills programs as well, that job seekers are given a stipend to study even, right? So these are some of the programs that are available out there. If you completed your SG United skills program, your first port of call for placement should always be your training provider, right? So that's part of the scope of work that they should be helping support you as well. But don't be afraid to approach other partners like SG Tech and WSG to see how we can support. I can't guarantee that we can deal with the numbers involved, right? But at least we'll do our best. There are certain activities that you can land into, like career support group, prep workshops, SG United Jobs, Nancy, right? I just talked about that. That we can try to lend some support where we can. Right. So the first of this, I just want to share. So this is something that Fidella also went through, is a career support group. We are starting the next batch on 7th April. Right. There's only we can only take in 20 people for this cohort. So let us know if you are keen. If there's overwhelming demand, we can actually start another batch. So it may not be on this date, but we'll try to accommodate as many as possible with the resources that we have. So do send in your applications. Don't worry about the slides. Again, if you send in the feedback, right, with what you're interested in, all these slides will be sent to you with all the details, right? And also express your interest on which program you are interested in. Okay. Finally, I just want to sell a bit of Goyok for a good example of an employer, right, that we've worked with to try to open up real opportunities, right, to all of you here. And these opportunities don't necessarily require that you have a full set of skills. Right, so ExcelLink is a data center managed operations company. So they outsource a lot of talent that they develop internally, right, and provide to their clients as well. So they are very keen to hire and train. So this is an initiative that they actually develop on their own as well, right? They see the value of giving back to our local workforce. So they are willing to hire inexperienced candidates, right? So there are a bunch of roles here. Some of them you may need basic tech knowledge. So for example, if you went to Coursera, you learn on your own, or you went to a boot camp for programming, for example. So you don't need to have a degree in it, right? You just have some basic understanding of it, and you've upskilled yourself. That's an excellent starting point already. And companies like this that we work with, right, are very open to offer opportunities to you. So this is one of the programs that they're running. They're calling I2I. Core Ramp Up Traineeships program. So they will recruit, then they will train people in this particular thing on an OutSystems platform, right? So this is a low-code platform where you just need to know the workflows, right? Computational thinking, what goes to what, right? And then you can, without actually having to code from scratch, you can develop programs, right? So that's what they talking about here in a low-code environment. You do need a little bit of programming knowledge. So, but again, like what I said, not something formal, like not an advanced diploma, not a degree, right? I mean, you've done courses on your own. That's an excellent starting point, right? That shows that you are open and willing to pick up these skill sets. So that will help you to get into a program like this, right? Again, all these slides will be shared. Yeah. So with that, I just want to round up with this slide, and thank you for your time. Right, the feedback survey is here. So try to, let me just get up a laser pointer. So this is for the feedback survey. If you want to book Albert's time or any of the other volunteers, right, that are around as well, do sign up here under the Volunteer Career Advisor Initiative. If not, under the feedback survey, do let us know which kind of programs you're interested in, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as we can. We also have a bunch of other activities like workshops, that are in the pipeline. So if you let us know, we can keep you on our mailing list so that you'll be the first to be informed as soon as these programs are launched. With that, I'll just leave this slide on. I just want to thank you very much for your time. We are slightly over. I appreciate you giving your lunchtime to us. And again, I want to thank all the speakers and the panelists and Workforce Singapore, right, for making this possible. Thank you. Have a wonderful week and weekend ahead.